Galatians chapter 1, verses 11 through 17 read, "But I make known to you, brethren, that the gospel which was preached by me is not according to man. For I neither received it from man, nor was I taught it, but it came through the revelation of Jesus Christ. For you have heard of my former conduct in Judaism, how I persecuted the church of God beyond measure and tried to destroy it. And I advanced in Judaism beyond many of my contemporaries in my own nation, being more exceedingly zealous for the traditions of my fathers. But when it pleased God, who separated me from my mother's womb and called me through his grace, to reveal his Son in me, that I might preach him among the Gentiles, I did not immediately confer with flesh and blood, nor did I go up to Jerusalem to those who were apostles before me, but I went to Arabia and returned again to Damascus." So this is just continuing a study that I had done a couple weeks ago in Galatians 1, chapter 1, verses 1 through 10, just picking up where I left off. But Paul is speaking to the churches in Galatia, and he was asking them and telling them how much he marveled at the fact that they were turning away from the gospel which he preached. And he was warning them about people who come that are perverting the gospel. They're preaching another gospel. He's telling them that if you hear another gospel than that which you've heard and believed, then let that person be accursed who does that. And then he's saying, am I an apostle of men, or am I an apostle of Jesus Christ? And he's saying that, no, I am a bondservant of Christ. And he's saying that what he received is from Christ. And so he's making his claim of, hey, this is who I was, but when the grace of God appeared, this is who I am now. And then he's giving a quick testimony to the churches, I would say the overview of being, hey, I am an apostle of Christ. I'm least of all the apostles, but by divine revelation at God's correct timing, I was made an apostle, not by flesh and blood. But let's pick up some stuff that I feel like is speaking to me this morning and encouraging me. "But I make known to you, brethren, that the gospel which was preached by me is not according to man." Remember, on the way to Damascus, he had this divine encounter with Jesus Christ. The people heard, but they did not see what exactly Paul saw. And then Saul, because he saw this glorious light, there was scales put on his eyes, and he had to be led into Damascus. And he said, the Lord said to him, "Wait there 3 days, and I will instruct you further." At the same time, he's going to talk to Ananias, the disciple that is in Damascus, to go to Saul, who is now going to be Paul, to put his hands on him, to pray for him and baptize him. And that's what Ananias ends up doing. And so this is what Paul is saying. "I did not get this according to man." Verse 12, "For I neither received it from man, nor was I taught it, but it came through the revelation of Christ." "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" Right? "Who are you, Lord?" Right? He says, "I am the one you're persecuting, Jesus Christ." Paul also, I think it's in Corinthians, he says that he would boast of a man that has been caught up to the third heaven, who's been able to see things unspeakable. Jesus revealed the glory of himself to Paul and instructed Paul to go preach to the Gentiles. And it wasn't taught like his previous life was taught by the Pharisees. And he's going to get into that. Verse 13, "For you have heard of my former conduct in Judaism, how I persecuted the church of God beyond measure and tried to destroy it." He was a son of Satan. And this is some encouragement. Although we go astray, it doesn't mean that God doesn't have divine plans for us. So sometimes the things that we actually walk in, the things that other people may look at and say, oh, wow, the Lord will never use them, or the Lord will never use that, may be the very thing that God uses to compel men to come to Christ. But this person has to encounter God in God's timing. And so he tried to destroy the church. Who is the one who's trying to destroy the church now? It's not God, it's not man, it's not flesh and blood, but it's this Antichrist, it's Satan, it is the spirits of the fallen ones. It's our adversary. And he was at work then, he's at work now. Verse 14, and I advanced in Judaism beyond many of my contemporaries in my own nation, being more exceedingly zealous for the traditions of my father. So I do think that God judges the heart. And I do think God's intentions to use Saul, changing him to Paul, was because of the desire of his heart to glorify God, to revere his name as holy. Even if it's misled. To start with, God sees the heart. The intention of God is to use man and women, just mankind, for his purpose and for his glory. And so we look at the outside appearance of man, but it's the inside heart that God sees. That's why Saul was chosen. He was exceedingly exceedingly zealous. He had a desire for God to be glorified. Verse 15, but when it pleased God who separated me from my mother's womb and called me through his grace. I find it interesting, Paul's making reference that God separated him from his mother's womb and many are called, but few are chosen. But God, every single person on this earth has been created for the intention for God to use them. And it's not like a puppeteer master, but the desire for God to use us has to be a complement to us desiring to be used by him. God can use anything and everyone at his will. He's all powerful, all knowing. Who are we, the clay, to tell the potter what to do or how to do it? And when God does things for certain things that we may perceive as bad, does that make God bad or evil? No. Because he is the creator. But Paul is making distinction that he was separated from his mother's womb. And so are you. I have gifts, talents, perceiving things from God, songs, hymns. Everyone has this in them. And maybe you have a different measure than I do and vice versa. And we may all have a different measure than what Paul did. But there's encouragement there. There is a purpose for your life, regardless of where you are. Paul was saying, I was killing the church that now I've become a part of by divine revelation of Christ. Now I'm telling you that I know that I was called, I was separated, and I was chosen by God at his perfect time. When it pleased God, God is well pleased to use you when he's ready, when he knows your heart's ready. Verse 16, to reveal his son in me that I might preach him among the Gentiles. So that was what he was called to do and separated from his mother's womb. He did not realize that all while he was being a Jew in Judaism, being better than all of the other contemporaries of his fellow brethren in the faith, right? He abounded more and more. He was growing more and more. He was exceedingly jealous of the traditions of his father, which is why the church was blasphemers in the way he perceived the church. So blasphemers must die because they're profaning the name of God. But the name of God, when he showed himself in his glorified state, that's when this revelation came. And like I said, Ananias laid his hands on him, prayed for him, baptized him, and then scales fell off of his eyes, during that whole process. But here's the interesting thing, and this is what I want to encourage you guys with, is the second part of 16 and then into 17. Okay, so when his son revealed himself that Paul might preach among the Gentiles, Paul did not immediately confer with flesh and blood. I find it interesting. I'm going to read 17. Nor did I go up to Jerusalem to those who were apostles before me, but I went to Arabia and again returned to Damascus. I want to encourage you today because God has called you, and there's purpose, there's intentionality behind everything. There's not a single thing that goes on in our life that is not directed and orchestrated that God cannot use. I would challenge that the very thing that you are going through, regardless of what it is going to be used by God to glorify His name. God has called you, and intentionally, if you feel led that you are called to do something by God, let's say this in-between stage, Paul's transformed, from Saul to Paul. He's been called, but he did not seek the approval of man. This goes back to the first part of chapter 1. He did not go up to Jerusalem to those apostles. To do what? To confirm what it is that he was revealed by Christ about. He didn't say, hey, is this right? Is this true? It says that he did not immediately confer with flesh and blood. He didn't go up to Jerusalem to the apostles. Where did he go? He went to Arabia and returned again to Damascus. What was in Damascus? That's the one who came, who was already a follower of Christ, who then, I would encourage, that walked with Paul, taught Paul, showed Paul, encouraged Paul, prayed with Paul, and built relationship with Paul. Sometimes the very place that you are is the place that you need to remain. Sometimes the things that we say that, I want to be out of this situation, is the very thing that God needs for you to remain in that situation so that He can equip you. Paul received equipping in Damascus. We can't expect all the time right when we're ready, when we say we're ready, when we think we're ready, and expect God to move. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have expectation for God to move. Always in prayer and thanksgiving, always submit your prayer and supplications unto the Lord with joy and thanksgiving in your heart. Ask, seek, knock, be persistent, consistently seeking God, be zealous for God. But be patient with God. And that's the thing. That's the thing that I'm really picking up this morning. Don't seek approval from flesh and blood. Don't seek approval from man. Get in your private closet with the Lord. Pray to the Lord. Fast to the Lord. Ask the Lord. Seek the Lord. Read the Word. Encourage other people. Strengthen the weak needs. Abide. Abide where you are until He calls you. Be prepared when He calls you, that when He says, come, follow me, you go. In this wait time, we don't just fold our arms, cross our legs, and say, I'm just waiting on the Lord. No, you are actively waiting. You are actively seeking the Lord. You are being zealous in the tradition, not in Judaism. The tradition is read your word, pray, fast, and believe. Have faith where you are. Encourage and look for encounters. Look for opportunities where you can proclaim the Lord. Look for opportunities when you see someone poor and broken on the side of the street. Hey, is there anything I can do for you? Do you need anything? Can I encourage you? Can I uplift you? Can I strengthen you? When you see someone moping, hanging their head low in the church or on the street, go encourage that person. They may not want to receive it, but you've made yourself available. God is well pleased. Verse 15 says, but when it pleased God who separated me. What are we doing today that is pleasing to God? Are you waiting with faith? Because see, even when it doesn't seem like you're walking by faith, waiting by faith is walking by faith. Including when we're walking with faith is walking by faith. Everything we do is by faith, and this is how it is well pleasing to God. So be patient while you wait. Be blessed. Be encouraged. Know that God has called you and separated you from your mother's womb for His good purpose. And in His good and perfect timing, He's going to show you, if you remain, if you continue to abide, He will use you mightily. Y'all be blessed.